Welcome everyone to another episode of Tutorial Tuesday. It's week number 6, 2019, and I sure am glad that you've tuned in for this. I have a couple announcements and then we'll get right into those questions. The first announcement is this. This evening I had scheduled with my attorney Scott Temby an Instagram Live where we were going to go over copyright infringement and how it affects you. Unfortunately, his schedule wasn't able to work out and he's not able to make it this evening. But as soon as we get that rescheduled, I will post about it and you guys can tune in for that. Announcement number 2 is that monthly photography challenge that I announced last week. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to go ahead and add a link that you can head right to my blog and read about it. But here's the first challenge. Using backlight, I want you to create a lower key, moody portrait of a human being. Not an animal, but this has to be a human. And you have to incorporate backlight into it. Now, low key or lower key means it's a darker styled image. And I want you to use your skills and research. If you don't know what backlight is or you don't know what low key means, what I want you to do is go out to the internet and I want you to research that. Then, once you create that image, you're going to submit it to images@cdphotog.com. What I'm going to do is review the images that are submitted and I'm going to choose a winner. Now, what that winner is going to get is a free portfolio review by me. It usually takes an hour to an hour and a half and we meet online. I give you tips and tricks to create better and more compelling images. So I definitely want you to participate in this monthly photography challenge. Hope to see your images soon. Hey, thanks so much for your compliment. I appreciate that. With every image that I post, I include the exposure details, which is my aperture, shutter, and ISO. And I also include the camera that I used and the lens that I used. So thank you. This is a really good question, and I really want to kind of dissect it as well. When you say without having too much noise in there, balancing out the highlights and shadows, there's a few things that come to mind. One is making sure that you're using a camera that handles high ISO, that has a newer sensor. The second thing is also making sure that you're using fast glass or lenses that allow light to come down the lens as much as possible. So let's say that you're using one of those kit lenses and it's one of those variable apertures where, at 35 millimeters you can be at f4, but as soon as you zoom off of that and zoom into 300, let's say, you're going to be at 5.6. Well, you're not allowing as much light. So what's happening in that situation is as soon as you zoom out to say 300, what you're doing is restricting the light. And to compensate for that, you either need to reduce your shutter speed or you need to increase your ISO, thereby increasing the noise. One of the many reasons that you pay so much money for those professional series lenses is because, like with the 70 to 200, I can be at f2.8 at 70 and at 300, thereby letting in a significant amount of light for that lens. If you're in the market for that A7, I think you're making the right move. If you want to choose a mirrorless system instead of a DSLR, it's probably the right move. In fact, in I would say 3 to maybe 5 years, I'll be upgrading my oldest camera. And when I do, I'll be going with Canon's mirrorless system, but I'm just not going to adopt that technology in particular from Canon or Nikon for that matter, because they haven't put out a track record yet for it. But Sony, on the other hand, does have, and I believe have set the benchmark for what the mirrorless cameras are. But it's taken them time as well. So I think you're making the right move and you'll be more than happy with it. I have to admit, this is one of my favorite questions that anybody has ever submitted. Although I love a face full of branding smoke, it doesn't hang on to my equipment like it does in my clothes. So the quick answer to this is nothing. This is one of those questions that can tend to polarize the photography community. And I could probably continue to talk about this well into the State of the Union, and really, who wants to watch State of the Union anyways? But I'm going to give you my practical information on why I shoot in RAW versus JPEG. And the reason for that is, number one, I need the maximum amount of flexibility in post-processing in all of my images. And I just can't have the camera deciding when you shoot JPEG, I can't have the camera processing that image for me. Number two, if I did shoot in JPEG, I don't have them. I feel like I'm saying this over and over, but if I took that into Lightroom, I would not have the latitude to edit that image like I would if I was shooting in RAW. And shooting in RAW, you can make very fine detailed edits in post-processing. Some of those include white balance, and also lifting shadows and lifting the darks if you underexpose an image. So those are some of the most important reasons to me. Now, by shooting in RAW, we're creating a much bigger file size, and that's because you're taking advantage of every pixel that your camera has to offer. So if it's a 12 megapixel camera or a 50 megapixel camera, when you're shooting in RAW, you're taking advantage of every one of those pixels. And as a result, the file size is much larger. A JPEG, comparison like that, where a JPEG may be 5 to 6 megapixels, your RAW file in a 30 megapixel camera is going to be 30 megapixels, relatively speaking. So those are the most compelling reasons why I shoot in RAW. Although I can't give you exact prices, because ultimately that's up to us to decide, what I can give you are different variables to keep in mind, and those are the size of file that they want. Do they want low, medium, or high res? And then another thing is, and the other thing to keep in mind is the term that they want to use it for. So do they want to use it for 3, 6, 9, 12 months? Do they want to use it perpetually? You can price accordingly depending on the term. Those are just a couple of the variables to keep